Very good. Influencing, going to the market and trying to do something there, influencing your demand choices and so on. And you know the C choices movement. Marine Stewardship Council and other groups are trying to influence what you choose. You know, sustainable. Yeah.
So you don't sit on the back.
You don't buy the certification and so on that people do. There are issues with that, right? So they get the certificate and they put a fish that you don't know, right? Oh gosh. Somebody actually checked supermarkets in New York and there's about 40% misclassification of what is in the pack. 40%. How many people know fish actually? Many economists like me, white fish is white fish. What's your problem, right? So yeah, but that's another way to deal with this, trying to influence choices we make.
Changing techniques.
Eh?
Changing techniques, especially.
Changing fishing techniques, yeah. Make them less harmful. Bottom trawlers have been on the agenda for years now. The UN has debated this about 3 times, if I remember well. It's come up the table and then a few countries will knock it off as usual, including Canada. Canada doesn't have a big distant water bottom trawling fleet, but they're always against it because we do have quite a number within. So they say, after they finish with the high seas, what will happen next? So you know, so yeah, that's a good one. So
I think the most fundamental thing is that to remove poverty.
Poverty?
Yeah, especially in African countries, because people only concerned about the environment, only they could feed themselves and do not have to stomach problem. So
poverty reduction, yes.
Yeah, I think that the most target for this is to try to get agreement to support the most undeveloped countries.
Yeah. I agree with you, and it's linked with the discounting stock in a way. Because if you are really poor, if you want your food, what do you care about tomorrow, right? So in that case, your discount rate is infinity. There's no tomorrow, right? So that's actually this led me to come up with something I call the poverty index. It's where I'm really trying to get hold of this. So you have a poverty line here. And if people are below it, there's a big push on the discount rate. So today it's all that matters. But then as you pass that line, you also have to be careful. Because the more rich you are, that can also lead to pressure of other types. High consumption per capita, for example. Right? So it's a very interesting area.
Spatial limits?
Spatial limits, right? Spatial climate is the kind of that what you're talking about.
Yeah, marine protection.
Marine protected areas, that's a big area. Right? Some say we should close 20% of the ocean to protect it. Even economists like me argue for that as an insurance. You're buying insurance. We mess up when we fish, we might get help from the protected area. So, yeah. So these are really practical, operational stuff you can do on the. Or you privatize the fishery. Nobody said this. Economists love that. Just give the fish to one person, that will be fine. You don't believe that, do you? Yes.
No, I didn't want to say too much because students want to talk more. But can you tell them more about these? All the ideas are being discussed are that fish are there, and we just have to manage them. But if you compare to land and agriculture, we did have a population bomb basically because of increased yields in the 1960s, Green Revolution, and so on. So, in terms of bringing science to fisheries, how do you, they are responding to climate, variability and change, and the privatization goes exactly to the point that agriculture is on land and land is always owned by somebody. So the tragedy of the commons is a very different issue compared to the ocean where large chunks are not owned. So you're always dealing with multiple players. So how do you take the agricultural model and transpose it on fisheries? How do you increase the understanding of fisheries? Or bring ideas of increasing the yield instead of always thinking we are depleting the resource, to just manage. Aquaculture is one thing.
Yeah, it's one.
But in a natural world, privatization is, it can be the agricultural model, but then it's owned by somebody.
Yeah, this is a whole area, So land is easy, right? Somebody said the difference between agriculture and fisheries, or forest, even forestry and fisheries is that the trees don't move, but you can count the fish move. So using the privatization model from land to this, and many economists are trying this. In fact, the ITQs is one way, individual transfer of quotas as a mechanism, community-based quotas. There are lots of instruments that are being put across. But the problem you have with fish is it's really hard to, they are not still, right? They move, so that is a challenge that needs to be faced. So essentially it's not easy to privatize them. It's not easy, unlike trees or farms. So dealing with that is a huge area. Hopefully on Friday we might be able to touch on this, on the economics. And increasing the productivity of the ocean. People are talking about fertilizing the ocean, for example. Iron fertilization. Just dump iron in there. Someone has discovered that fish love to eat iron and they grow big and so put that in and you will get more fish. Hopefully with that bringing up even bigger problems, right? So yeah, so people are thinking of ways to do it. Agriculture is certainly one big area, as you mentioned, right? How do we do this? And if you think of ecologists in my center and similar places, agriculture can be good, and the issue is there are two big types. You can split it into two, the carnivorous agriculture and the more herbivorous ones. And so salmon, for example, needs fish meal or anchovies and so on to feed them, to make them salmon. But then you have the carps and the tilapias that feed on anything, including vegetarian fish. And most ecologists will tell you that that is a good thing because it can add to the fish mass and so on. But the salmon and so on actually don't add to the quantity of fish. That's a lot out there. What do you think about agriculture? Say to us. Going for the waste.
Yeah. But ecologically, it's killing the basin, the ecosystem of the basin. So it should be, we have to determine how we do it.
So again, it's not an easy solution. I mean, a few years ago, I was in Vietnam, and we drove Natuan is a city, and we drove along the agriculture farms, and they have the pumps, and within 10 years, they just have to move to the because of these issues, pollution. So they move, and we just see the open ponds there after they've moved away, right? With green water and all that in there. And you know that this is not coming at free cost. So, you know what? This is the solution here. We should go down to how many? 3 billion people. How do you do that? Okay. All right, let's see. What else do I have? Yeah, so this is something I do from an economist, right? Yeah, so has this lecture changed your understanding of the relationship between economics and sustainability? Your understanding of economics and how it relates to the environment, has this lecture affected that? So, in my last class, actually, I made them to write down what they think about economics and environment. Just in the beginning, it's a small class, master's class, 12 students, so we wrote down. And after the lectures, I make them write what they think, which is amazing to see what they said. We're doing an article, actually. Does anyone of you want to say something about it?
I'm wondering if becoming fisheries a commodity, just like any other, like wheat or something like that, would help take our fisheries a little bit better.
So, will making fish a commodity like wheat really help us manage fisheries better? And I think that relates to your question in a way. Right? What do you think? Huh? So, question again. So let you do, or did I interpret it well? Go ahead. Say what.
Well, I was thinking of maybe becoming fisheries a commodity, just like wheat,
Wheat, rice.
rice, like big sources of food, and they have a big role in the global market. You can buy commodities. So there's more people looking at them, and more people taking care of them, perhaps.
More speculation.
But there is also more speculation, but
Yeah.
For example.
So you're talking about trading them on the commodity market like stocks and so
yes, I mean, rice,
Futures.
these commodities they're pretty stable in the market to a fairly, to some degree, right?
No.
No,
Speculation.
no but I would say in terms of the access you have to these commodities, I mean, you find rice in the market, you find wheat.
Yeah. Actually, the people have tried a lot to get fish onto the Chicago market there. And it's always failed. And I'm trying to understand why. Somehow on the futures market also, because people want to sell the uncertainty, right? Those who love uncertainty will buy from those who don't. And there has been a number of attempts, it always fails. And I don't know why that is happening. Yeah, there are attempts that maybe because fish is perishable than rice. But why is it not working?
I think people don't understand it. So they just,
People don't understand it. That's part of the problem. At first, when you asked the question, I thought, oh, is it on this? You want to follow up here? Yeah, fish.
One basic thing is it's the only thing that we still use directly from nature. It's not being grown. And it has its appeals because of that, and it has its drawbacks.
Disadvantages.
It's an ecology, it's an economy that is different. That's what I think.
Yeah, so that could explain partly. When you asked the question at first, I thought you were talking about trading fish
Well,
as a way. Is that also part of it? Or?
no, I wasn't thinking too much about trading. I mean, of course, if you transform fisheries into a commodity, you have to consider the trade side of it.
But at the moment, do you know that fish is traded more than rice? Did you know that? We trade fish more than rice. 40% of all the fish caught is actually traded internationally, actually, compared to 5% for rice. So it's remarkable. And a lot of it goes to Japan. No, where is Japan? Japan, Europe, US. That's
There's still the difference between agriculture and fish. Agriculture, you are growing what you want to eat, and very few cash crops are grown just for export.
Yes.
But fish is essentially, we have somebody that may or may not eat as much as they catch.
Exactly. So that's, for example, rice is mostly eaten where it is grown, and it's too heavy anyway. Can you imagine shipping all that rice? Yeah. So it's
Firstly, it should move subsidies.
subsidy.
Because fishing is not economic, fishing is cruise. And secondly, we should convince fishermen that if they fish sustainably, they will, they should be, convinced. And they should believe that if they catch a certain amount, they will be able to fish maybe more than today.
Yeah, but then you get into the big problem and the tragedy of the commons thing. Because everybody can fish,